And there we go. That should deal. Yeah, that looks to me like that's dealt with it. So yeah, that's dealt with it. Apologies. It's what happens when you put me in charge of a show. So welcome, one and all. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter. We will be having, I think, Vox and Christopher Mowdy joining us in a few minutes. So hopefully we will be discussing a few extra things with them. I'm also in particular looking forward to getting Vox's view on some rather interesting things that have happened. Texas is, I was going to say Texas is being Texas, but they've gone a little further now than even I do certainly remember the veiled threats by Governor Perry to secede and leave the union. At this point now, a Texas state representative has said that he is going to file a bill to offer Texans the opportunity to leave the union. I don't think he can give them that opportunity. He can certainly give them the opportunity to vote on it, but that doesn't mean that they get to leave. That's, I think, somewhat unfortunate. It's actually true that the U.S. Constitution does not prohibit leaving the Union, although the Supreme Court has ruled that that's an interpretation of the Constitution. Nonetheless, I think they should be allowed to go, especially given the more recent shenanigans. On top of that, which is a recent development this week, we have the state of Texas issuing or filing with the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the election results in 4 other states. This is unprecedented. This has never been done, and this is being done by a state that claims to respect states' sovereignties and states' rights. That's the ball game. That's the only thing Texas wants. That's why they're threatening to leave, is because they don't like being told by other states what to do, and they have now sued in the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the election of 4 other states over which they have zero say in any interpretation of any law I've ever heard of anywhere on the fucking planet. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that in 1 second. I think that's probably going to be our central thrust of the show. As you know, there is a few other things going on in the news. There's COVID. There's a bunch of other, and there's nothing other than the numbers are, of course, continuing their upward trend of getting worse. There's nothing breaking news and newsworthy. And unfortunately, I think we have 2 groups of people. One are those who in general either don't care or have become numb to it. And 2 is, this is a little self-serving, admittedly, 2 is our audience, who I think probably does care, but who know the numbers probably about as well as I do. So I think we're going to take a little bit of a break from that until there's something brand new. Rush Limbaugh has come out and said that there cannot be peaceful coexistence between liberals and conservatives. Now, that's a bit of a misquote. What he actually said was that there are people who believe that, and he is on the fence. Sometimes he concurs, sometimes he disagrees, but he is certainly starting to think that it cannot happen. He is also claiming that many bloggers, a sentiment many or whatever that people like Trump in particular, and he's the best example of this, use to indicate when they have absolute, when the number is 0, that's when you hear many. And of course, Trump said, well, I can't remember their names. Yeah, that's because the number is 0. There are no names. But at any rate, many bloggers are saying that there should be, in fact, 2 countries. So he was saying, a quote, "I see a lot of bloggers. I can't think of their names right now. A lot of bloggers have written extensively about how distant and separated, and how much more separated our culture is becoming politically. Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's called the politics of division, and it has been used by a factor of about 10 to 1 by the right, not by the left. But and that notwithstanding, there cannot be peaceful coexistence between 2 completely different theories of life, theories of government, theories of how we manage our affairs. We can't be in this dire conflict without something giving somewhere along the way." And I know that there's sizable and growing sentiment for people who believe that this is where we are headed, whether we want it or not, whether we want to go there or not. I myself have still not yet made up my mind, but he's more than willing to foment dissent in one way or another. See politics of division. At any rate, well, hold on one second. All right, yep, there we are. That is was Rush Limbaugh on the suggesting that America is headed for, and maybe in fact should be, in a civil war, because the differences between the left and the right are irreconcilable. It is strange to me because they're not irreconcilable in most other first world countries. It's only recently and only in this country that we've had that problem. And there are very specific reasons for that. It's got nothing to do with the inherent differences between the two. It's that one side fully believes that there is only one side, and that there's no such thing as negotiation. There's no such thing as compromise, or at least if there is, it's a sign of weakness. And if you disagree with them, get the fuck out of this country. That's the problem. Period. End of discussion. At any rate, speaking of that kind of sentiment, Texas has repeatedly reminded people that aside from being the best and only state in this country, Freudian slip, despite their lack of education, their lack of health, they're basically C bottom of in most lists of accomplishments in this country. Aside from most of those things, and fully aware that, I was going to say, I said earlier, all Texans when saying something derogatory. We have Texans who support this channel and who, in my view, again, perhaps a little self-serving, are absolutely the exception that proves the rule. So when I say all in future, I mean all who have a very specific sentiment, which certainly is not all Texans, and I've met some who are very much the exception. But having said that, and fully aware that there are faults in all states in this union, they have decided to file with the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the results of the election in 4 states. And if I can get them, if I'm 1 minute, that isn't coming up. So, well, you know what I can do? Let's, I think I can get that up ostensibly here in the, oh, it's not coming up there either. So let's see. Oh, yep, it got taken down. So we do not at this point have that. Oh, that's why. All right. Well, that's what happens when you close out your computer without saving files. So at present, we actually, oh, you know what? There is one other thing. Give me a second. This is the problem with not having Vox or Christopher here. I end up talking to myself more than I normally do, at least in public. And it just becomes obvious, that's all. So let me quickly check. We did have that for you, and it appears to... All right. Yeah, that would be it. Let me... All right, I may have to manually see if I can get this to... Yeah, there we go. All right. That is the bill there. We have it up on our right sidebar. Actually, it's not a bill. I apologize. It is let me get that up so that I can read it along with all of you. Let's put that up here. All right, so that is to the Supreme Court, State of Texas versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, State of Georgia, State of Michigan, and State of Wisconsin. It is a motion for, well, let's see. Actually, is this the amicus? No, this should be the actual, on a motion for leave of a filed bill of complaint. So this is their complaint, and what they are asking is to overturn the now certified election results in both those states, in all four of those states. That's Wisconsin, Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those states have certified it. It's completely legal. They have already gone over all of the statewide challenges, and many of those challenges did end up in the Supreme Court, which declined to hear them. Let's see. What they are essentially saying is, now what I'm going to do is they've got several arguments here, and I'm not going to read the actual arguments. You can see this in our news section. There is a link provided by Bregwin. Thank you very much for that. To these, the entire, to this entire document, and you can read it there on your own if you would like. And what, I'm just going to try to stick to, okay. So their argument is as follows. They've got three arguments. One, the separation of powers provision of the electors clause is a structural check on government that safeguards liberty. That's not an argument. That's a premise in argument. Stripping away the safeguards from voting by mail exacerbates the risk of fraud. And the bill of complaint alleges that the so that's actually that's the two premises on their conclusion. The bill of complaint alleges that the defendant states unconstitutionally abolished critical safeguards against fraud in voting by mail. First of all, let's assume that's true. It doesn't matter. You'd still have to demonstrate that there is credible evidence of some kind that having abolished those safeguards, there was then fraud. The Supreme Court has already looked at it in at least one of these states and said there's no evidence of any such fraud. So even without the safeguards, that's only one step in trying to get any sort of relief against this kind of thing. The other problem is, of course, Texas has no standing. Now, what standing means is that you are in some ways affected by the outcome of this case directly. You are somebody who has been wronged and has the right to sue. That is called standing. You cannot sue without standing. I cannot sue a complete stranger for something that stranger did not do to me. I can't do it for obvious reasons. So the state citizens in those states, if they would like to, could sue. They've at least got standing because they were voters in that election. Texas didn't vote unless they committed fraud in any of those states. So unless they're going to make that argument, this is prima facie, on its face, absurd and can't be. And I normally wouldn't spend this much time covering it, except that this was filed by the Texas State Attorney General, who is ostensibly supposed to know better on behalf of the entire state. 16 states have now signed on an amicus. Amicus is Latin friend as a friend of the court in support of Texas in this case. They also have no standing either. Then again, when you file an amicus, normally you don't have standing. Otherwise, you'd be a member of the actual suit. So let's see. There we go. So I'm not going to bring up the list of amicus states. Again, we do actually have that. Suffice it to say, any state that files an amicus in this is, in my view, telegraphing a profound misunderstanding of the law and of the job of the Supreme Court, which is not to overturn elections or to decide elections. It appears that the court has no interest in this suit right now, and we'll talk about the states' replies to this. So, yeah, I want to check the live chat real quick. Texas, it's like, oh yeah, oh dear Lord. All right. Yeah. All right. So there has been a reply by Pennsylvania to, there's been actually, I think all the states have now replied, but Pennsylvania's is interesting for a couple of reasons. Their preliminary statement reads as follows. Since Election Day, state and federal courts throughout the country have been flooded with frivolous lawsuits aimed at disenfranchising large swaths of voters and undermining the legitimacy of the election. The state of Texas has now added its voice to the cacophony of bogus claims. Texas seeks to invalidate elections in 4 states for yielding results with which it disagrees. The request for this court to exercise its original jurisdiction and then anoint Texas's preferred candidate for president is legally indefensible and is an affront to the principles of constitutional democracy, which I did find interesting. That their argument, of course, is that they're overturning the election to safeguard liberty. They learned to label their actions the same way George W. Bush liked to, the exact opposite of what it is that they're actually doing. What Texas is doing in this proceeding is to ask this court to render a mass of baseless claims about, to reconsider a mass of baseless claims about problems with the election that have already been considered and rejected by this court and other courts. In an attempt to exploit this court's sparingly used original jurisdiction to relitigate those matters. But Texas obviously lacks standing to bring such claims, which in any event are barred by laches and are moot, meritless, and dangerous. Texas has not suffered any harm simply because it dislikes the results of the election, and nothing in the text, history, or structure of the Constitution supports Texas's view that it can dictate the manner in which 4 other states run their elections. We here at In Time file this under shit that should have gone without saying. Nor is that view grounded in any precedent from this court. Texas does not seek to have the court interpret the Constitution so much as disregard it. The cascading series of compounding defects in Texas's filing is only underscored by the surreal alternate reality that these findings attempt to construct. And, I just lost my audio, which means if and when our co-hosts show up, I'm going to have a hard time hearing them. So I'll have to get that addressed in a second. The alternate reality includes an absurd statistical analysis positing the probability that President-elect Biden winning this election was, quote, 1 in a quadrillion. Bill of complaint at 6. I don't know what that means. Texas's effort to get this court to pick the next president has no basis in law or fact. The court should not abide this seditious abuse of the judicial process and should send a clear and unmistakable signal that such an abuse must never be replicated. All right, now let's see. An in-time file as an amicus on behalf of those 4 states. Well, maybe. I'm also planning on suing Texas because I, as a non-citizen of Texas, hate how Texas runs its schools. So I'm going to sue Texas for that, and we'll see how that goes. Also not a big fan of governors of Texas, so I'm going to sue on behalf of, I don't know, maybe the planet Kahutek. So I'm going to switch my audio, my sound here, because my headset just died. So there we go. I should now have sound again. That would be nice. All right. This is utterly shocking. So also let me really quickly check and see if we've been able to get either of my. I think it's a miscommunication on my end on how we were going to connect to the show today. So unfortunately, all right. So now that was Pennsylvania's reply. And I do believe other states have replied. I don't have them yet. Pennsylvania's is unique for a couple of reasons. Somebody's coming in. So hopefully they're going to be able to. I got that would probably be, I think that would be Vox, whose camera should turn on there in a second. All right. I still don't. I don't see Vox, but I hear. It appears that she's talking, and her mic is there. She is. All right. Let me hold on, Vox. I will get you up there in a second. It's good you're here. You're going to be the one who ends up moderating me in this discussion because, yeah, I'm a little triggered. I'm going to admit I'm a little triggered. All right. Well, okay. I can't hear you. I don't know if they can hear you on the outside. Yeah, I don't know. It's also just as possible. Well, no, the sound, it reports the sound coming in. I just don't hear it. So let me just quickly check the audio settings on that. The sound's coming in. I don't hear it. It's possible I had a sound issue. Oh, did Vox? Yeah, I lost my headphones. So can the outside hear Vox? Vox, would you mind just giving a check for the outside? All right, my suspicion is they cannot hear you. Oh, and that may also, no, that's either you coming back or that's, oh, there you are. Yeah, your audio is coming in. I don't think, they cannot hear you, Vox, so let me, I don't know what ended up happening. I had a crash and my whole system was acting rather strangely. Now I can, give me 1 second, Vox, and I will, I can easily connect you. There you go. They'll be able to hear you. I still can't. Oh, I know why.
Check.
There we go. Yep, I can hear you now.
Check.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Are we live?
We are. We actually,
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to have the camera on right now. I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries. I apologize. I obviously was not clear. My apologies. So yes, we started almost on time.
Well, I will go ahead and tell the audience then. Hi. I have about 20 minutes ago taken some oxycodone, so I may be just slightly inebriated.
Listen, I've been talking about Texas, which I frankly would only do under the effects of OxyContin oxycodone.
Good old Texas.
Yeah. So now I take it you've seen the Texas's what is it? Their petition to the U.S. Supreme Court
to overturn the election. Yes.
Yes, and I am not entirely sure where they get the notion they even have standing in this. I think that was one of Pennsylvania's first objections, was a lack of standing. Did they make, to the best of your knowledge, any argument as to standing?
Not at all. No, I'm not even sure. This is like... So from a legal aspect, I imagine that at this point, the federal pool of jurists is just ready to put a gun in their mouth. They're just not stopping, right? Like, we've had this same exact lawsuit in different terms, just like different areas of filing turned down like 7 times since the end of voting on November 4th or whenever we voted. Like, this particular lawsuit has been turned down 7 times. So this is just the 8th version of the same lawsuit, and now it's just being brought forth by Texas. There was somebody in Georgia who tried to do the same thing not 3 days ago and got turned down. So it's not going to make it anywhere. These people are just... I don't know. Like, Donald Trump apparently has this iron grip on these people, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I am. Oh God, Titan. I'll get that one up just because. Yeah, Well, at least they have standing. I mean, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Pennsylvania, you have standing. This notion that a state who's the cornerstone of, don't mess with Texas. The whole cornerstone of Texas is states' rights. That's it. That's what they're all about. We're willing to die for states' rights, and we don't like other states telling us what to do. And here you got. Them telling four other states how to run their elections, which strikes me as
So I think the gist of what they're saying is that yeah, I mean it's basically like they're complaining about the way that say like Pennsylvania decided to do mail-in voting or something like that. And basically what they're saying is because they did their thing differently than we did our thing, right? It makes elections unfair, right? And they're just like ignore like the sad part is that all this costs taxpayer money. That's
yeah,
the sad part. Because basically, the idea here is that each state gets to determine how it runs its elections, right?
mm,
And so Pennsylvania could decide that it's going to allow everybody to vote for president starting like the moment the candidates are announced, right?
yeah,
And that voting is done by driving up to a McDonald's and honking your horn for X amount of time. And if a bunch of geese are therefore disturbed by that, honk, you have voted for Donald Trump. And if they are not disturbed by that vote, the vote is for Biden, right? And
mm.
and they'd be completely within their right to do so. And Texas is saying, well, that's not fair because that's not how we do it.
Well, and of
Okay,
course,
well, I mean
even if
that's
it's not fair, it's not fair to the citizens of that state, not to Texans.
yeah, and they're also, basically this lawsuit is an attempt to invalidate, um, what 60 million votes, or I'm sorry, like 17 million votes,
Yeah.
right? They're just saying like, yeah, all of those votes are gone, um, and and then what, right? So just like the presidency is determined by 45 states instead of 50 states. Well, that's not.
Yeah. That's not, oh. Oh.
I don't know.
Did
I
you?
saw it like I don't know. I saw it and I laughed. Right. I just kind of chuckled and moved on with my day.
I laughed, except when 16 states decided to file an amicus. Um, I mean, so that's 16 states that don't mind going on record thinking that this isn't ludicrous or insane. I mean, this in my view, and I am guilty of $400 hyperbole on occasion, but I mean, in my view, this is an assault on the sort of the very concept of the Constitution. I mean, the idea that one state can determine the results of the election of another state, and 16
Yeah,
states have filed an amicus.
Constitution, Monstitution. Who cares about the Constitution, right? I mean, come on, man. We're talking about like, look. So you've got a group of people, right? We call those people Democrats, right? And they care about this thing called the Constitution, right? They're so antiquated, right? I mean, they're just like, you care about what it says in this founding document, right? We're Republicans. The only thing we care about is raw, unadulterated, absolute power,
Hmm.
right? So if the Constitution, suits us, like if we win because the Constitution, cool. But if we don't, who cares? We're gonna do our thing anyway. I mean, that's what it's boiled down to.
Yeah, that's
Fortunately,
yes, please, please.
fortunately, I think the thing that has given me the most joy, right? Because I tend to be a pretty gracious when I'm in victory, I tend to be pretty benevolent. I think the thing that has given me the most joy is watching Trump-appointed justices
Hmm.
smack down these lawsuits as frivolous and juvenile and barely rising to the level of like an L1's attempt at writing an amicus, right? It's just
Yeah.
fantastic. Some of the destructions, some of the takedowns by Trump appointed justices.
Well, to be fair, according to a number of now legislators in the Texas state government, Texas actually doesn't have to abide by the Constitution because it's not their Constitution.
Hmm.
So there is, as we discussed on Monday's show, an attempt to revitalize the notion of secession from the Union, which brings to the discussion here. Pennsylvania, in their reply, said in closing, at least to the intro to their reply. Texas's effort to get this court to pick the next president has no basis in law or fact. I can't believe you have to say that. I just can't believe that's where we are. The court should not abide this seditious abuse of the judicial process. I don't think the term seditious was accidental. I think given the fact that they're talking about secession.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Somebody got a good sense of, yeah.
The Texas is the only state that actually has the capacity to secede.
Really?
Yeah, so remember, Texas was its own country before joining the United States.
That's true.
And when they joined the United States, it was under the understanding that they could, take their basketball and go away with it if they wanted to.
Well, now, as I understand it, though, there is no constitutional prohibition on secession. That was just a Supreme Court interpretation of the law. Is that roughly? It's been a while since I've actually taken
Abraham
a look at
Lincoln's. It was Abraham Lincoln's understanding of the Constitution and his executive powers. He decided that you can't secede from the Union, and therefore he made it so. And we went and fought a war over it, and the people that said you can't secede won. I mean, that's very, very obviously very boiled down thing, and I would take a moment to look up, some source material, but unfortunately I'm on my mobile at the moment, and I have like 7% battery life, and I think if I click off, we'll get booted off the program. So.
All right. Well, thanks for the warning. So if we lose you, we know why. Well, okay,
you'll never lose me.
Well, yeah, you'll come. Okay, so wait. I see. Is that a Oh, it's smoke signal. It's Vox. Vox knows Indian smoke. So who the fuck? What?
Well, don't you know? I used to be a Boy Scout.
Okay, so we're gonna. Okay. So there's I think we have a troll in the live chat. I'm hoping the mods will deal with it, but he just oh Jesus. Can we sell Texas to Mexico? What kind of person says, "Ooh, shoot, I accidentally put that up on the stream." Can we sell Texas to Mexico? I don't know. I think Texas has standards. Mexico has standards. Yeah, okay.
Mexico has standards.
Mexico has standards. Way to step on the joke there, but all right. Well, okay. That and we covered it earlier, but I wanted to get your opinion on the Rush Limbaugh thing, where he basically said that suggested that it would be impossible for conservatives and liberals to live together. I assume he means American conservatives and liberals, because they seem to do it reasonably well in other countries. And that some sort of civil war or violent clash or whatever was inevitable because it was impossible for us to live together. What are your thoughts on
the majority of my family members are Trump-supporting conservatives, and the majority of my friends are Trump-supporting conservatives, And nothing about them being Trump supporting conservatives stops me from being friends with them, being able to engage with them on a familial level. Obviously, discussions about politics can be difficult and cause disagreement and sometimes anger. But um, our bonds, our interpersonal bonds, are much stronger than any minor quarrel over politics. So once again, this is just Rush being wrong 98.7% of the time, and he's just a horrible person. He really is. No, I think that we are more politically divided than at any time since the Civil War. Yes, but um, that's on a disconnected level, right? Um, it's very difficult to be that way when it's with people that you know, right? So I have seen people that I know and love say some really horrible things. And I've confronted them about it, and I said, well, why would you say this? And, we're generally able to find common ground. I have a lot of faith in the American people, in the American spirit. So no, I think Rush Limbaugh is just wrong. But what I do think also is that those comments are very dangerous because there are
Mm.
groups of people, right? So there was just the FBI just broke up a group of 4 people, 3 Marines and a porn star, um, that were like modern, like full on supremacist terrorists, and they had gone to like Idaho and Nebraska and were recruiting and things like that, and they've all been arrested on like weapons charges and conspiracy charges and things like that, right? And comments like that energize those particular group of people. Um, so is like the capacity for violence ever present? Yeah, it is. But I don't think that's true of the majority of people. I think the majority of people right now, I think that there is a disconnect between the academic understanding of what is going on and the real world right now. And I think that that's larger now than it has been for a very long time. But people are scared. People are hurting. Our standard of living is slipping, and that's kind of what brought about Donald Trump. And so anything that feeds into that, is going to have the propensity for violence. And so anybody that feeds into that propensity of violence is somebody that we should be worried about. But I do think that, at least what I've seen, I mean, like, look at me. I'm a trans woman living in the South. I'm surrounded by conservatives. I've never been threatened. I've never had, anybody be really like violent to me. I mean, I have, but like, not to any great extent. So I think that these people just have a fundamental misunderstanding about the American people, and I think that that fundamental misunderstanding is why they eventually lose every time.
Yeah, wow. I'm saying wow because it's funny. I think one of your previous statements seemed a little cynical, which I was sitting there going like I'm definitely heading in the cynical direction, and then this optimism where I'm like, well, yeah, you haven't been in the U.S. in a while, have you? I wish I had
Hmm.
that optimism. I will say this: they lose every time. That's a statement I'm going to have to think about on a long enough time scale. I think that's true, but on a long enough time scale, the good guys lose every time too. I will say this.
True. That's true.
Limbaugh wrapped it up with saying this, and I know there's a sizable and growing sentiment for people who believe that this is where we're headed, whether we want to or not, whether we want to go there or not. I myself haven't made up my mind. I still haven't given up the idea that we are the majority, we being conservatives, and that all we have to do is find a way to unite and win. And our problem is the fact that there are just too many rhinos, which stands for Republicans in name only. So many Republicans in the Washington establishment who will do anything to maintain their membership in the establishment because of the perks and the opportunities that are presented for their kids and so forth. Yeah, you just named half the Democrats, too. And, there isn't any more. I mean, if they're really rhinos, if they're Republican in name only, then they're not part of your so-called majority, and you'd be winning. So, in terms of, because he had made the argument that Republicans really, in his view, probably are the majority, and I've seen no evidence to support that claim. So, speaking of dubious claims, yeah.
I mean, if the presidential election was merely done by popular vote, we'd never have a Republican president ever again. If universal mail-in balloting were a thing, we'd really, the Republican Party would be over. That's why they constantly have to do voter suppression and things like that. But Rush Limbaugh has this capacity of saying a true thing but missing why it's true. So I think that most Americans are conservative in their economics. And the reason that they are conservative in their economics is because they don't understand economics. And asking people to really understand economics, I mean, I've been studying economics for a really, really long time, and I say that I don't really understand it at all. But I understand it enough to know that like trickle-down economics is a joke. But most Americans don't, right? So most Americans, are economically conservative and socially liberal, right?
Yeah.
And so if the Republicans were smart, right? If these people were smart, which, I don't necessarily want smart Republicans, but if they were smart, what they would do is they would say, all right, well, we're going to support gay marriage, we're going to support legalized marijuana, we're going to support these things, right? And then the Democrats would be just an extreme minority, right? Because most Americans are economically conservative. Now, again, they're economically conservative because they don't understand economics, right? Being economically conservative is like shooting yourself in the foot, constantly and just asking why your foot hurts. But if Republicans are smart, that's what they would do. Fortunately, there's this group of Republicans who are called the Republican base, and those people are all Southern Baptists. And Southern Baptists think that, Jesus is coming, back tomorrow. And, they've all got to be ready for him, right? And so if they don't, support the rights of, unborn fetuses to suffer as soon as they're born, then they can't get into heaven. And those people will continue to keep the Republican Party in chains vis-a-vis their absolute inept stupidity.
No, I think that's a very good point. That I think where you land on the Republican versus Democrat is determined more by, are you more concerned by social issues or are you more concerned by economic issues? I think that's an interesting. I think that's a very. That's a bastardization of what you just said, I think. But is that reasonably close? They could bridge the gap.
Well,
they could drastically increase their numbers if they became more socially liberal, so as to allow progressive.
Exactly. Yeah, if they became more socially progressive, even just moderately, then they would absolutely, we'd see a shift towards the Republicans, and that kind of scares me a little bit. But I don't there's just the social progressive movement is so antithetical to the Republican base that I don't expect it to occur.
Yeah, I think I suspect you're probably right. All right.
Well, look what Donald Trump did early on, right? Look what Donald Trump did early on. Donald Trump he had a gay flag, right? He was like, Caitlyn Jenner, he was asked about Caitlyn Jenner, would you stop her from peeing in your bathroom? No, I don't care where Caitlyn Jenner pees, right? So he was like saying these things. Now, turns out he was, a president that did more to harm gay rights and trans rights than any president since, like ever, you know. Um, but there are still like gay people out there and trans people that I know who are like, oh, he's amazing. He's Donald Trump this, and I'm like, y'all are a bunch of I don't know, right? But like he kind of like talked this talk for a little bit, and that attracted some people. And if he had followed through on it, man, I mean, Joe Biden would not have been president if Donald Trump had followed through on what he said he was going to do for gay people and trans people. Of course, he did not. So,
Actually, that's probably the case too. If he had followed through on just about anything he had said for anybody, including the conservatives, if that wall were actually built, then again, it would have probably taken an act of Jesus would probably have to have come back, and Jesus would have convinced Mexico to pay for it, and then Trump could get reelected. But
funny story. So okay, I actually own 2 square inches of the Mexican-American border. So,
okay.
Are you familiar with a company called Cards Against Humanity?
No.
So Cards Against Humanity is a card game, and basically, you have a couple people who get together and they read out a sentence, and a sentence has blanks in it, and then you have a bunch of cards, and these cards say just really insane things, right? And so then you have to put these cards together to make the sentence say the funniest thing, and then you vote on whichever sentence said the funniest thing. So Cards Against Humanity for Christmas, generally speaking, holds like asks for money, right? Like as a charity almost, except they don't donate to charity. They just take the money and they do really stupid things. Like one year, they got like $29,000 or something, so they paid a guy with a bulldozer to dig a hole, $29,000 hole in the ground. So 2 years ago, they used that money and they bought a spot of the Mexican-American border. And then they chopped it up into little bits and gave those bits to every person that donated to this fund. And the idea is that because eminent domain laws require you to sue a property owner, the United States federal government now, in order to build a wall through that area, which is an area they would have to sue to build the wall through, now would have to sue, I think, something like 75,000 individual Americans in probably a class action lawsuit in order to build across it. So it was just a brilliant thing. And I said, yes, please, I will take a postcard, amount of land at the Mexican-American border. And I plan on willing that to my children. And, they can be proud to say that, we fought the good fight.
Oh, dear Lord. I knew this was going to end up in eminent domain. You could actually probably make a little money off of it, too, if it ends up being.
Right?
Oh, Jesus. In theory, you only get the whatever ostensibly the value is, but they always have to be pretty liberal with that. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up. I did want to actually get back to really quickly what some of the other states had said, because I think I glossed over that. So it's just I don't even want to say the name of the Texas Attorney General because I don't want to give him any. I just, dear Lord, I mean the fact that an Attorney General could actually do this.
We can call him Butthead if you want.
Well, that would be at least as descriptive as anything else I've heard. Let's see. So there was. Let me just try to. Okay, so the Pennsylvania. I already covered what Pennsylvania had said about it, although. I like the surreal alternate reality. The Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, has said that, quote, the election in Michigan is over. Texas comes as a stranger to this matter and should not be heard here. The challenge here is an unprecedented one without factual foundation or valid legal bias. In Georgia, they said Texas presses a generalized grievance that does not involve any sort of direct state against state controversy requiring original jurisdiction, which actually, when I'm done with this, if you could explain what original jurisdiction means, I would appreciate that. But so then, let's see. And in any case, there is another forum in which parties who, unlike Texas, have standing can challenge Georgia's compliance with its own election laws, Georgia's court. And Wisconsin called this an extraordinary intrusion into Wisconsin's and other defendant states' elections, a task that the Constitution leaves to each state. The president has now stepped in and has asked the court to allow it to be a party to this, saying that, quote, our country is deeply divided in ways that arguably it has not been since the election of 1860. There is, in regards to this issue, I see no evidence of that. Yes, we are divided as a country. We're not divided over the election. There's people who understand that it was fair and, one side won, one side. The side that won has no objections. Most of the side that lost that I've seen are sitting there saying, we lost. Sometimes it happens. It's only the few who are believing what so far there has been absolutely no evidence, credible or otherwise, for about this election being stolen, that are being fomented by Trump. There's no division here that I can tell. But at any rate, he says, quote, there is a high level of distrust between opposing sides, compounded by the fact that in the election just held, election officials in key swing states for apparently partisan advantage failed to conduct their states' elections in compliance with state laws. Again, not only no evidence for this, but it's already been litigated, and his side has already lost. So they mentioned original jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court several times, and I was wondering if you might be able to help fill us in on that.
Yeah, sure. So, original jurisdiction deals with the Supreme Court's authority to hear and decide certain types of cases before they have been heard by a lower court. So, the idea is that disputes between states involving like public officials or disputes between like the United States federal government and an individual state have the Supreme Court has the original jurisdiction there, so that they can hear the case immediately. The case doesn't have to work its way through the normal court process of going to a federal district court and then to an appellate court and so on and so forth. In a fairly famous case that most people read about in school, regardless of whether you're going to law school or not, Marbury versus Madison, the U.S. The Supreme Court's decision found that the U.S. Congress can't alter the scope of the court's original jurisdiction. So Congress has no capacity to alter these things. And so what these people are wanting to say is that the court here, because this is a dispute between Texas and other specific states, that the Supreme Court has the right and sole authority to adjudicate this particular measure. And of course, what the other people are saying is no. This is not something that would rise to the level of original jurisdiction. And so we find this particular power in the Constitution of the United States, Article 3, Section 2, which, of course, Article 3 is what lays out judicial powers. So I'm not going to like I don't quite remember the entirety of Section 2 off the top of my head. I'm good, but I'm not that good. If Nick, if you're speaking for some reason, I can't hear you.
I am speaking. I muted myself and closed the camera for a second, and of course, I am. That's
Gotcha.
why they call me the muter suitor. I was giving you a hard time. I said, Vox, I can't believe I'm so disappointed that you can't even read.
Can't remember it right off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes that accent. All right, that's when I know. That's when I know you really don't give a fuck what I'm saying. Please continue.
Well, so it says something to the effect of that the judicial power will extend to like all cases in law and equity that arise under the Constitution, and that the laws of the United States and treaties that are made or which will be made under their authority, and cases that brought up affecting ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls and so on and so forth would all like be something that these things could take part of. So basically, yeah, what they're saying is that the Supreme Court can take this case up right now. It doesn't need to go to any process because, of course, if it has to work its way through the normal court proceedings, well, we're getting very close to December 14th, right, when
Yes.
electors are gonna. So they don't have time to do the normal process. I don't think that, I don't think Texas has any standing to bring this suit to anyway. So I imagine it's just dismissed without comment. I personally don't expect them to grant any kind of ability to hear this case at all, right? My expectation is probably that they just dismiss this without comment, because any comment could set precedent, right?
Yes.
And I don't think that they want to set precedent at all here. So that would be my. And of course, it won't be unanimous, right? Because Clarence Thomas and Alito would definitely just say yes, we need to hear this, absolutely, right? Because if it makes sense, those two have to rule against it.
Yeah. Well, that brings up another interesting question, though. Okay, so the electors are certified on the 14th. The certification process is overseen by the head of the Senate, who also has to sign off on the certification in order for it to be considered valid. The head of the Senate is the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. Ergo, somebody who is obviously rather big in the Trump administration. What happens? What do you think is the likelihood that he decides to not certify it, and B, what happens then?
I think that the odds of him not certifying the election are very, very small. Mike Pence, for better or worse, is a person who believes in the law of the land, right? So I expect him to follow the law of the land, right? Because his job is merely to certify that this process has been done according to the laws of the land. And it has. If he did not certify this election, it would set off a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we have never experienced in this country. So for that and that alone, I don't expect him to do that. He, if Mike Pence wants a career in politics after this, right?
Yeah. Yes.
If he doesn't certify that he has no career in politics, it's over, right? So I expect him to certify the results.
He is reasonably predictable, if nothing else.
Yeah, there were these people that would come up to me, right, and they would say something to the effect of, well, if Donald Trump was impeached or something like that, you'd get Mike Pence. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, Mike Pence is this and Mike Pence is that. And I'm like, There is no possible world, right? I want to make a modal claim here. There is no possible world in which Mike Pence is a worse president than Donald Trump, right? That world does not exist. Mike Pence is homophobic. He is transphobic. He doesn't believe in the separation of church and state. But in any capacity, he is better than Donald Trump. So I would have loved to have a Mike Pence as president
Yeah,
like if I
compared
could
to.
think of a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like if somebody had asked me in 2015, was there like who do I think would make like the worst president? Be like, well, I mean, there's this Indiana governor named Mike Pence, you know, but we didn't fully grasp the like Donald Trump's not a hurricane. Donald Trump is like the 10 plagues combined with the flood. Like he's God's wrath against like I mean like yeah, that's I mean it's just like
Well, it,
I'm
it
rambling. That
it's if I can. There's one way to summarize it. He's the worst president I could possibly imagine, under the understanding that he's qualified to be president. Trump is not. Trump is
Mhm.
not qualified. That's the difference. When you have a president who, in his second or third week, takes an 8-year-old kid and says, "Hey, you see that over there? That's the nuclear football. That's where I got all the launch codes." And that just does that to a kid hanging out,
Yeah.
with his parents in the press corps. And it's like I don't think you're supposed to be doing that. I could be wrong. That he's not qualified. He's just not qualified. That's it.
Well,
So
there is when I have there are some certain communities that I'm in, and in discussions in these communities, I sometimes run into like rabid leftists, right? Who just think that like America is just like the worst thing to ever happen to humanity, and all presidents are war criminals and things like that. And so those people are always fun to talk to, right? But if you remove them, what's generally understood is there was this unwritten rule, right? That everybody wanted what was best for America, and the Democrats and Republicans simply had different ideas of achieving that goal, right?
yeah,
So there's a lot being written about like how George Bush and Barack Obama, how that transition went and how it went so smooth and everything like that. There's a lot being written about how Barack Obama, like recently there was a photo published where Obama basically like said, look, I want all the living presidents to come to the White House so that they can all give me advice, right? Because it was understood that all of these people wanted what was best for America. They had all done the job before, and that just that was showed that unwritten rule that we're all working for the betterment. Donald Trump has broken every fundamental institutional norm that we had, and I don't know. The sad part is I don't know if we can fix some of that, right? Like it's going to be very, very difficult to fix those kinds of things, because we are not going to have a peaceful transfer of power. And what I mean by that is that there are just certain norms that go into transfer of power, like the president, the outgoing president, sitting next to the incoming president, right, during the process, right, and things like that. Like those are the norms that give of the American people this idea that this system works.
yes,
And prior to Donald Trump, people thought that the system was broken. Donald Trump succeeded in breaking the system. He did. Right? He
yeah.
succeeded in breaking the system. But he didn't break the system in the way that the system needed to be broken, right? Like, yes, there is a swamp. Yes, the swamp needs to be drained. Yes, we need to get money out of politics. Yes, we need to get lobbyists out of being able to influence Congress. Yes, Citizens United needs to be overturned. Remember the very first time that I was on your show, what was I promoting, right? The For the People Act,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Yes, we need to pass the 270 interstate compact. Yes, we need to do all these things. That's how we're supposed to break the system, right? We're not supposed to just walk in, blow up all the norms, and then walk away.
Yeah.
So we're in a very, very bad place. But while my optimism, Nick, has been tempered, it has not been destroyed.
Well, thank God for that, because it's been my experience that that's the only thing that makes changes for the better. So before we go, we did have one interesting comment that I had not heard, but makes a lot of sense, because this is such a stupid move on behalf of Texas, and I've heard a couple of ad hoc explanations for why maybe this is happening. None of them make sense. I don't think this has anything to do with the secession plans, because none of the legislature actually wants a secession. They like stoking those fires to help get votes and get people to vote for them, but they're not interested in it, and they're not interested in putting their reputations or their careers on for it. Senator Porpoise has said something that I think and I'm going to put that back up here. The Texas AG is facing fraud charges, and it's a ploy for a pardon, which perfectly explains this to me, because Flynn proved that Trump can be bought. Trump can absolutely be bought, and he will absolutely pardon people for favors. So this is the first I've heard of this. It does make sense to me. I don't know if you've heard of this or what you know about this.
I had heard about it in passing, but I haven't done any real reading into it. I certainly will do some reading after the show on it, and we can certainly address it when we do the next show. I guess if Sinister's still in the chat, do we know if this is state fraud charges or federal fraud charges? Because remember, the president can only pardon federal charges, right? They can't pardon state charges.
Well, yeah, but this is the state. This is the Attorney General for Texas, so I'm not sure he knows the difference. Just saying.
When you say federal, when you say federal, you're talking about them federales, right?
He doesn't know what standing is. He either doesn't know or doesn't care in either way. I can't believe he does. Oh God!
Sure. Wait a second. He absolutely knows what standing is. That's when when you're upright on 2 feet.
Well, that's when you're in line at the. Okay, I'm not even gonna. That was one too far. Where I was about to go with that one. So, Porpoise is saying,
standing. That's when you're sitting there in line at the amusement park.
Yeah, that's better than where I was going. I really shouldn't have. So I'm glad I stopped myself. I've heard all fraud charges.
Okay, so
federal. Yeah.
Federal. So absolutely, yeah. But again, you have to be convicted of a crime in order for, or at least you have to be. Well, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Flynn is. Yeah. Speaking of undermining all of our institutions. Flynn was at least on trial, but hadn't been convicted.
Oh, I thought Flynn had been convicted.
Well, let me rephrase. No, Flynn had been convicted on a few smaller things. He just got pardoned. The pardon was so broad so as to include everything he was on trial for right now, and anything he could possibly be tried with in connection with any of this in the future. It was very much like the Watergate one in that respect, and how Nixon was pardoned for anything he might have done, whether it had been discovered yet or not, in regards to the whole Watergate thing. So it was just this hugely broad brush. But yeah, you see, okay, we've got another. This is a very important issue. Yeah, they could be state charges in against the Attorney General, but if they have their way, it's only state charges temporarily. It becomes federal charges when they secede. So, which case presumably Trump couldn't pardon him anymore. But again, this is the Attorney General of Texas, so I'm not sure he's aware of how that works. All right, I'm not bitter. Oh, I'm not bitter. I am not bitter. All right. Well,
you know what? We won. Right? We won.
That's true. That's very true. and no amount of these shenanigans is gonna. It's not gonna. It's not. They can't change a thing. So knock on wood on that one. But I don't see how they could at this point. And the fact that they're resorting to this just means they know they've lost and they can't do a thing. So, all right. Well, we do have on Tuesday coming up. We're going to have Mouty. Christopher Mouty is going to be on to do his next in What Is Music series. He's going to be talking to us about music therapy, how music makes us feel better, what's the effect that music has on our mood, and how this is used to make people's lives better. So, I am looking forward to that. We are back on the clock for breaking news. I think it's only going to be sort of, well, it's usually only supposed to be national level breaking news. But what I mean by that is we've had a lot of, Jesus, there's so many catastrophes going on right now. So I think everybody knows what I'm saying. But we'll any breaking news, we will be on for that. But short of that, I will be on the Discord in about 5 minutes, Vox, if you are up for it. But it sounds like we would love to have you. But I also understand if you want to go chillax for a little bit. I do appreciate you finding a way to make it.
I'll come in and be goofy for a little bit.
Perfect. All right. So Vox and I will both be on the Discord in about 5 minutes. Thank you all for joining us. Listen, if you've enjoyed this stream, please like and subscribe. That is the best way, or that's if you can always become a patron and do all these other things. But if you like and you don't want to, just like and subscribe is the best way to really show your support for the show. It's just YouTube that actually cares about it when it comes to the algorithm. So I hope you will consider doing that. And we will see you all in just a few minutes. So, Vox, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you all next week.